Welcome to Author Quick Draw. This is your permission slip to take a quick break from the hecticness of your newsfeed and hang out with me, Annie Bucknell, freelance feature writer and women's fiction author, as I get to spend some time playing Pictionary, giving away prizes and having fun with some of Australia's best loved authors. Now, we know that your favourite authors can tell incredible page-turning stories, but can they draw? We're about to find out live now in 3, 2, 1. Hello, everybody, and a big hello to Fleur McDonald.
Hi, Annie. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us tonight. So I'm chatting to you guys from just outside of Brisbane. And Fleur, where are we speaking to you from today?
From my office on my little 5-acre block that I have on the outskirts of Esperance in WA, on the south coast of WA. I've just got the sun coming in, so if I get all speckled, that's what's happening there. So it's only 5:30 here. So
that's lovely. It's 7:30 here, and you know what? The sun's only probably just set half an hour ago.
Oh, but you don't have daylight saving, do you?
No, we don't. So yeah, it's that means my son is getting up at 4 a.m. But anyway, let's not dwell there. Guys, where are you chatting to us from today? Or everyone that's joining in and watching us, leave a comment, let us know. Give us a like if you can hear Fleur and I loud and clear. Let us know if there's any issues in the comment section below. Now, Fleur McDonald, if you don't know her, which of course you would, she's a best-selling Australian author. She writes rural fiction, and her books have sold over 500,000 copies worldwide. The one I've just recently read is called The Shearer's Wife, and it's a really great mix of rural literary fiction, but there's a real good crime element. It's just got a bit of everything, a very strong female lead, and I absolutely loved it. I cannot wait to get talking to you guys about it. But while we are talking about it, Fleur is going to be having a bit of fun with us and playing around a Pictionary. So she's going to draw her favourite movie. And while we're talking, we're going to distract her a little bit, and then at the end of the time where we've finished talking, she's finished drawing, she's going to hold it up, and you guys at home will be able to guess and see, if you can guess what the movie is and win a copy of The Shearer's Wife. So, are you ready to start drawing, Fleur?
I am the world's worst drawer, so I'm guessing that this is going to be a very interesting few moments.
That's no problem. Like I said, stick figures work well. So whatever you need to do to get the point across is all in a bit of fun. All right. So I guess, you're renowned for your rural fiction. You've written stories across rural crime, just general rural fiction, romance, all of that stuff. So pretty much there's something there for everybody if they're looking for a book of yours. I wanted to talk to you. Obviously, you live in those sorts of settings, and you have lived in those sort of settings. I think I was reading that you've been in Jillaroo and you've had, just wonderful experiences in your life. What is it that you love about writing about rural Australia? What draws you to this place?
Well, I live here. I work here. I've worked on farms for probably 25, 30 years. I own my own farm. I just feel like I'm in a really good spot to be able to write those sorts of things, just to be authentic, because I think you need to be authentic when you're writing about these things. People will pick up when you're writing about farming and the way that we produce our grain and our meat and everything. People are going to find you out if you are a fraud. So I love writing about that because I know it. And with the crime side of things, I've got a friend in Perth who's a detective who used to be the head of the stock squad in WA, and so he reads everything that I write. For authenticity.
Can you tell me, for people like me who don't know, what's a stock squad?
So Stock Squad is a dedicated police squad to investigate any crime within rural areas. It's not called the Stock Squad as such anymore. It's called organised rural crime. That's not quite right either. Something to do with organised crime, but in brackets rural. And so it investigates anything, whether it's stock theft, whether it's someone's taken fuel, whether there's anything that's wrong, that's crime within rural areas. They investigate.
Wow, I had no idea.
The detectives in that are really, they're not your average run-of-the-mill detectives. They are ones that have to be able to ride horses. They have to be able to ride motorbikes. They need to have experience with stock because they're going to be mustering, you know, if there's a crime in, say, so I set without a doubt in sort of in the Cloncurry area in Queensland, and they need to be able to get out there and muster the cattle and use it and sort of be involved with the muster and then count the cattle. So they've got to have some stock now. So they've all got to be able to ride horses and everything. They're a really amazing set of detectives. And I spent probably a day and a half with the guys out of Toowoomba there a couple of years ago, just sort of riding shotgun with them for a bit, which was awesome. I suppose I should be doing, shouldn't I?
I am going to show my townie roots here, but like I don't really have a lot of experience with rural Australia. And part of the beauty of doing this series is I've actually had an opportunity to read a lot more rural fiction and learn more about this huge part of Australian life that I just was so naive about. And I'm listening to you now, and I feel like I'm going to ask the most silliest question. But are you saying that people actually steal each other's stock, that happens, like cattle theft, that kind of thing?
Yeah, it certainly does. It's quite big, especially when stock prices are really high. So you know, cattle prices are pretty good at the moment. So if someone could go in and take, you know, like a B train or a road train worth of cattle and benefit, you know, profit from it, they will. Classic one. Can't remember what state it was in, but they stole a heap of sheep and then they shore them. And so kept the wool, but gave the sheep back. But they profited off from. Yeah, it was quite amazing.
That's incredible. I had absolutely no idea. And so I guess, you know, this particular novel does have that element of crime, and there's the element of drug crime. You said that you have a detective that reads your novels, and obviously you do a fair bit of research. You know a lot of the crime that happens in rural Australia. Are some of the events in this novel or other novels inspired by real life cases?
So I'm a bit of a news junkie. So whether they're real life cases or they're just sort of like a news article that I've read, when not the Shearer's Wife in particular, but Silver Clouds is a really good example of that. I heard a story on the ABC Drive program, and they were talking about some rings that have been found by Waterhole up north, and the guy said, you know, I'd love you to text in the paragraph, if you're going to write a book, the paragraph of the first paragraph of that book to do with these rings. And when I was interviewed by the Drive presenter, I said to him, do you remember this story? And he said, yeah, I do. And I said, well, this isn't the first paragraph. This is actually the book on those rings. So that story created, that story about the rings created that book.
Wow, fantastic. And obviously, like, being that you've got the lived experience of living on the land and having knowing the people and living in the community, plus being the news junkie, plus doing the research that you do, all of that just combines to create these really cracking stories.
Yeah. Well, I hope stories.
I think they definitely are. And I think the proof's in the pudding. I was trying to count how many novels you've got out now, and it must be over 15.
Yeah, 16, yeah.
Yeah, that's incredible. That's an incredible career so far, Fleur. So with the rural settings, there's something that comes up a lot is that whole feeling of community and how everybody knows everybody and everybody knows everything. But the flavour that came through with this book, which was really fascinating, was the fact that Zara and Jack have a relationship. So Zara is a journalist and Jack is an officer. So they then have this extra element of conflict because, you know, they really can't discuss with each other what's going on, and they've got these really professional lines that they can't cross. How difficult is it actually living and working in a community and putting up those professional boundaries? Is that something that, you know, that's quite common?
Well, everybody in rural communities are intertwined, whether you're a policeman, whether you're a nurse, because more than likely your kid is going to play sport with, you know, a policeman's kid or a nurse's kid or something. So it's we are all intertwined, and we all know who each other hangs out with and each other's cars, and it doesn't matter how big the town is. I think even like Esperance is 15,000 people, and yet I know a lot of the cars in town, so it's one of those things where you just seem to know each other. I think that Zara and Zach's relationship is really interesting in the way that that small town thing where she's a journalist and they're coppers, and coppers are notoriously sort of wary of journalists anyway, and they just they really butt heads over it. They try hard not to, and they have to put those they have to put those boundaries in place. But it's the first time that they've had to deal with anything like this that was such a big case, and so they're all learning and how to actually hold all of that. But if you talk to the local doctors here, or you talk to other counsellors, I remember I took my son for some counselling at one stage, and they spent quite a long time within the first appointment just putting the rules down for when we came across each other in the community, which we would. It was like, yes, we will acknowledge you, but we are not going to have a conversation outside of this office about what we are seeing you about. So they have to keep very clear boundaries when we're living in small towns like this.
Yeah, I hadn't even thought of that. Of course, like counselling, that would be a really, and not just for the person seeking the counselling, but for the counsellor who may feel like they can't walk down the street without, people disclosing to them and things like that too. So that's, it would become important in certain professions to really draw those professional boundaries in place. And that's something that you've drawn on with the novel really well, and causes great conflict, that propels the story forward as well.
I think Sarah behaves a little badly in some spots, but I guess that's sort of not that abnormal, and then it plays out why she's behaving badly later on.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be fun if she was not misbehaving at some point, at least.
Adults behaving badly are always good fun to watch.
They are, aren't they? Good fun to read and good fun to write. So the other thing that really struck me that I'd never considered before was the nomadic lifestyle of a shearer. So we've got a dual timeline in this book too, which really just sucks you in. And I just felt so much for Rosie reading her story. Rose, but with Rose and Ian, it's set in the 80s and stuff, and that he has this nomadic shearer's lifestyle where they travel from town to town getting work, and it's not really that conducive to family life and all those sorts of things. Is that still the case from what you're aware of, or is that?
I used to work in shearing sheds when I was living on the farm, and it's probably not as nomadic as what it used to be. Sort of go somewhere for a season, but we get a lot of shearers coming from New Zealand, and so they will go to a team, and they'll spend a season with that team, and then they might move on to another team. So that season may well be within, say, I'll just use Esperance as an example, within the Esperance Shire. If there's if that contractor has, I don't know, say 200,000 sheep to shear over the season, then they'll be employed for as long as that takes. Whether there's weather around and the sheep get wet, you can't shear wet sheep. So so that's sort of the weather. Shearing is very weather dependent, so that could make a really short season or a very long season. The nomadic lifestyle that I talk about in The Shearer's Wife was very much from a cocky shearer point of view, people that used to just get on the road and just follow shed to shed to shed to shed, and they would end up all the way across Australia at times. Back a little further then, so I wrote a book called, which one was that in? I think it was Crimson Dawn that this one was in. So back in the, but like before the 80s, like say back in the 60s, 40s, 50s, 60s, a lot of the shearers used to get on push bikes and ride sheds, and the tyres were obviously not rubber the way that they are. Well, they were rubber, but they're not the sort of tyres that we had now. And they would end up, if they got punctures, they would stuff the tyres with dry leaves and grass and everything to getting them to where they needed to go.
just riding along on a push bike stuffed with leaves, tire stuffed with leaves.
Yeah, leaves and
yeah, it is. And it's such a difficult, that would have been such a difficult life. But these are just things that you find are really fascinating, like, because you really can only reach some of this information either by living in a community or having grown up in a community and moved away and having that generational connection, or really through fiction. Like these stories, otherwise would be lost to those of us that live in cities and don't have grandparents or great grandparents who've lived this life.
When I write the historical timelines, which I don't do in every book, but there's often a historical thread there that will like lead back to a mystery type thing. And I've got a lot of older people that I'm friends with, and their stories are fascinating. And you can grab hold of them and harness them and create a whole storyline around one of their stories, which is what which is what I did with the first a lot of Shearers that I wrote about with those push bikes. There's an old fella that used to live at the back of where Mum and Dad live now on the sheep station up in the Flinders Ranges, and he used to do that. So he could tell me everything. He could tell me how it smelt and how it felt, and that's just so important.
Yeah, and those are details that you can only get by having, open, genuine conversations with someone and being really willing to listen.
Absolutely.
And that's such a touching way to honour them too, someone that you've known in your life by including them in the novel. I bet he was really tickled.
Yeah, he's no longer with us, and a lot of stories died with him, but I was very grateful for the ones that he shared with me.
That's really beautiful. So you obviously write about Detective Dave. He's part of he's a series character. He pops up in a lot of the books and fans love him. There's actually a couple comments here already about Detective Dave. Here we go. Yvonne Lockhurst says, hello from the Northern Rivers of New South Wales. Love Dave and I can't wait to read the new book.
Thank you.
Yeah, and just other comments, some of them we don't have the actual names for, but people are saying they're just fascinated by hearing some of the information. And someone else saying, I remember riding my push bike over many categories in Mount Isa. You had to get the speed just right.
Yeah, so shake.
So there's some questions coming in from the audience too. So I'll might just ask those now, but we've got Tracy Anderson who was saying, what's easier, writing crime or straight romance, and do you have a preference?
I don't think I could ever claim to have written romance. I sort of do have relationships within my books, but they are not the main storyline. I don't like reading a book that I can tell what's going to happen within the first chapter. And so I steer clear. There's a couple of reasons I steer clear of romance. One, I've had some really crappy relationships, and I just don't believe in it. That's probably why, mostly. But I love crime, and that's where I always try and steer the books to. So I think the crime. The rural fiction, which is the Shearer's Wife, which comes out in December, and then if you go back to the early Dave Burrows books, which come out in April, those early Dave Burrows books are real, because with Dave as the main character, it is all about crime, and I really love writing that hard hitting blokey type crime. So that's sort of where my real passion lies. But these other books like the Shearer's Wife and that I still really enjoy, because you still get the opportunity to tell a story and research and just live somebody else's life. I wanted to be a rural journalist at some point, and Zara is a rural journalist. So I've lived a rural journalist life through her, which has been wonderful.
And you have through your stories. I mean, that's what someone who was interested in people's stories would go in and interview people and just sit with them and learn about their life. And you've been able to bring them to life in another way, which is so much more accessible as well, and feels so much more human, picking up a fiction novel like that. And I think that with The Shearer's Wife, there is love, there's a relationship, or there's a few relationships, but I guess what you're saying, and that's true, is that you cover relationships at different stages and all different kinds of relationships too. So it's not necessarily like the the stock standard happily ever after boy meets girl kind of story. They're more it's more of a true to life general fiction type feel.
Yeah, you'll never find me romancing anything as in like romanticizing life in my books. It is as life, and sometimes that's hard because not everybody wants to read about real life. But I think there's enough entertainment in there to be able to put that aside and know that you're writing about real life, but with a genuine entertainment about it.
And you can definitely have a satisfying ending without being able to predict it as well.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, no, that was probably my slip of the tongue with romance there. But Leanne Hodge wants to know if you like to write as a child.
Yeah, I did. I used to plagiarize Enid Blyton really well. But yeah, no, I really did. I wrote lots of boarding school letters, lots of faraway tree stories. When I went to boarding school, I wrote back to Nana and Papa and my mum and dad all the time. And then I graduated onto lovesick teenage poetry. And then I started to write kids' books because my son's autistic, and I just was trying to help with his attention span. So, I started writing about things that he knew. So about the working dogs and the pet calves and the pet lambs and those sorts of things. So I've got 2 children's books also published with Farmer Rochelle and Farmer Hayden, which are the kids. And so I've always written in one way or another, which it's a bit of an outlet. It's one of those things that you can make it rain when it's a drought outside. And if you've had a really crappy day in the sheep yards, which in Silver Clouds, I had a really crappy day, decided that I was going to come home and write a chapter, killed 4 people in that chapter. Felt so good up.
That's a legal form of therapy, I suppose.
Exactly.
I have writer friends and we do talk about this sort of thing too, how it's a bit of catharsis, taking your emotions out on the page, but it kind of lends that realism to what your characters are feeling too. If you've got something you can tap into at that particular point.
Yeah, that's right. I think it's just it probably adds a little bit of spice to what you're writing as well. If like you're really angry and you want to get something out, and and you just hit it with your emotions still there, I think that probably gives some power to what you're writing.
Yeah, absolutely, and all the better for crime. So with your rural police stories, the Detective Davey said you really like writing the hard-hitting, male-led crime fiction. What is it that you've learnt through that whole process of writing that series and writing these characters about the lives of rural detectives and rural police officers that, maybe that we in the city just don't really get?
Well, I guess, like I said before, the stock squad are a really different breed of people. They've got to be able to ride their horses and their motorbikes and all that sort of thing. So I've learnt that crime is amazing. What people will go to, the lengths that people will go to. We were talking about how drugs can be trafficked from rural areas. So if they're grown out on the Nullarbor, often what happens is they will harvest them and dry them out, and then I'll put the poly pipe is like a couple of inch pipe about that round. It's quite sturdy, and it's what they used to run water through, like from windmills and things. So what they'll do is they'll put all the dried marijuana down inside these pipes and put caps on either end, and then just stick them in the bottom of a cattle truck, and they'll get them to Perth or to Adelaide that way, and they'll just sort of toss them out, and people will come along and pick them up. The people that are supposed to be picking them up come and pick them up. So there's just there was another thing that I heard about some people that were transporting drugs through lamb roast. So what they would do, they cut the lamb roast open, put the drugs inside, and fry back them again. So it gives a whole different meaning to rosemary, seasoned rosemary. So, yeah.
Oh, I've never heard anything like that.
There was another one where the guys were they had a warrant to go out to a particular property to they knew that there were drugs being grown out there. They had Big Brother come in over the top, so they had photos of the marijuana crop, And when they went there, they knew it had been harvested, but they also knew it hadn't gone off the property because they'd been watching. Couldn't find it anywhere. So they went back. They went back twice, and what had happened was in the hay shed, instead of stacking the hay, they'd sort of made a shell around the hay, so like it was open in the middle of this hay shed that had hay stacked at the front of it. So the marijuana was all inside.
Wow.
And so my dog might just be about to bark. My son's got home from work. So they had found it, but they had to get some of the other normal policemen to come and help them with the warrant. This python was going past once they found the hay. They found the drugs inside this hay.
Yeah.
The python going past, and these other coppers weren't so used to being anywhere near a python or anything like that. They shot through, couldn't cope with all the the adrenaline and scariness of the python, while the other stock squad just they're going, "Yeah, mate, that's no problems. We'll just shift him along."
Yeah, you'd have to be pretty comfortable with snakes, wouldn't you?
Oh, well, yeah. It's just part of living in the country. I live in Esperance on the south coast, like I said before, of WA, and we've got about 5 snakes per square metre here. You get used to it.
We live out on a housing estate where, like, it's not, maybe semi-rural, but not really. Like, anyways, it's all getting quite built up. But if someone spots a snake, it goes up on the Facebook page, and everybody's freaking out because someone's seen one snake. So it's just a whole different mindset, I think.
Yeah.
How are you going with your drawing?
Do you want to see it?
Yeah. Are you ready, guys? So I'm going to get you to hold it up to the camera and just slowly pan it across.
Okay. Oh, which way? That way?
And yep. Okay, so you can see it's got a car. Oh, can you bring that in just a little bit closer so you can see what the words say? So does that say NY? Can you read out what the words say, Fleur?
It says up the top it's NY. So
yep.
And then it says I walk.
Ooh, all right. Okay, so there'll be a little bit of delay as people start to guess. While the guesses are coming through, can you give us any clues?
It's a movie made out of a book that's written by one of my favourite authors.
Okay, favourite authors. So movie turned book. Is the book better?
Of course it is. They are always better. And just remember that I love crime.
Okay, love crime. So it could be that's a very big clue. First guess has come in. Walk the line. Not that one. All right, keep going, guys. All right. So how long ago was the movie made? Do you estimate?
Oh, I don't know.
Probably definitely in the last 10 years.
No. Yeah, maybe. Yep. Closer to the 10 than now.
Yep. Okay. And
did I just Google that? I'm not actually sure.
I'm thinking. Oh, I don't want to steer anyone up the wrong path. Let's Google it. Okay. So, favorite author, a crime novelist, movie made in the last 10 years. The lead actor, I don't know if this will help anyone, but the lead actor just released an autobiography or a memoir. So that's just come out, and he talks about his starring role in this movie and how he got it. Oh, you're gonna kick yourself when you hear what it is. All right, can you hold up the picture one more time?
Oh, hang on, pen's about to roll away. No.
Okay, so we've got the car. So the movie title, guys, another clue is 2 words. 2 words, and they both start with L. It is tricky. It's a good drawing, though, Fleur. Got another guess coming through. We've got A Time to Kill.
Oh, that's a John Grisham book. I love that book, but no, it's not that one.
All right, next one. Yvonne's guessing The Lincoln Lawyer.
I reckon that's it.
Nice work, Yvonne. That was a tough one, but you got it out. Well done. I will contact you after the show and we'll get your details and we'll pass them on to Fleur's people who will get a copy of The Shearer's Wife out to you, lucky duck. All right. Thank you for playing along, Fleur. So just to wrap up, we like to ask a few authory type writing questions because especially when we get a chance to speak to someone like yourself who's so prolific and accomplished and have a backlist that can keep you busy for a whole year. I'm wanting to know if you ever, after 16 books published, do you ever suffer from self-doubt or procrastination?
Oh, all the time. Every time you start a new book. Yeah, every time you start a new book. Sting said once that he suffers from self-doubt as soon as he starts a new album, and I think if someone like him can suffer self-doubt, we're all in good company. But yeah, look, I still think that at some point I'm going to get caught out. That I can't write. Someone's going to tell me one day.
Really?
Yeah, it's a funny. Writers are riddled with self-loathing and self-doubt, I think is a really a good way of putting that. And procrastination, that's I do really, really love writing, but when you get to a tricky bit or if you've written yourself into a corner or something like that, the windows are much more interesting to wash than trying to fix the problem.
Yeah. Well, sometimes I do find that even doing that whole, like something boring like cleaning or whatever, your mind can kind of work through the problem and you can kind of come back to it fresher. So maybe there's a line on how when that actually becomes unproductive and getting in the way and you're just dragging the chain there. But what tricks do you have to overcome that? I mean, I guess are you able now to just kind of put it in a box and get started?
Oh, yeah, you've got to do that because I write 2 books a year, so I don't have the luxury of time. So, you've just got to keep pushing through and making sure that you've got, that you're going to make your deadline. I write a journal every morning and it's a bit like talking to myself. So if I've got a problem, I can usually sort of, write the problem out and then start talking to myself in the journal. And sometimes I can solve it that way. It's a bit like if I've got a problem, I need to talk it out. Other than that, I ring up my detective friend or we go and have lunch or something like that, and we talk that through, or I ring my girls and we have a bottle of wine on the patio.
Yeah, that's a great solution.
That works.
So are you a bit of a plotter or a pantser? And what does your process look like to sitting down and writing one of these novels?
Well, I've always called myself a pantser. And back when I was only writing 1 book a year, I certainly had the luxury of time to be able to be a pantser. So if I just wrote and I let it take me where it's going to take me, if I wrote myself into a corner, it wasn't a big problem. I still had time to sort it out. I don't have that anymore. So I tend to plot a little more, however, with the knowledge that it's more than likely going to change, because at the end of the day, I want you to keep reading and get to the end and not know what's happened. I'm always a bit wary that if I know what's going to happen, you as the reader might work it out as well. And I don't want that. I want you to get the end, because I am a classic for getting halfway through going, I know who's done this, read the last pages and they go, oh yeah, I'm right, and then putting the book down and not finishing it. Or I love it when I get surprised and I'll work out that I haven't got it right and I'll go, oh, where did I go wrong? They're great books if you've done it like that.
And I suppose if you're telling yourself the story and you're finding yourself surprised, it's more of a guarantee that that's going to happen for the reader too.
Yeah, that's right.
Or even if you're writing yourself into a corner, we know the characters are in a really tricky situation. And when we get to those points as readers reading those novels, we're also thinking, how the hell are they going to get out of this, which is such a good feeling too, because you can see that there's this much left in the book and something's got to keep happening. It's not over. So that is always such a good feeling too.
Yeah, very true.
So what does your process look like for writing a novel? Do you do many drafts? Do you sit down and write straight linearly from start to end? Right from the beginning to end. Yep, absolutely. I tend to write a book. Well, it's on about a 6-month cycle. So I tend to write a book within, like 8 to 10 weeks. And I edit as I go. So like if I have finished a chapter, then when I go back to it the next day, I'll edit that chapter and then I'll start my next chapter. Because really with the time
frames that I have, to be able to put it aside and give it, let it sort of percolate on it. I call it percolating. I don't have a huge amount of time to do that, so I like to make sure that I've got the edit done by the time I get to the back of to the finish of the book. If I've got time then to go back through it, I will. I often leave myself notes in the margin. If I've written something in there that's not quite correct and I know that I've got to go back and research it a little bit more or get an answer about an investigation technique or something, I'll just leave myself, or I'll just keep writing, leave myself a little note and go back to it.
Yeah, you're not breaking the flow.
Yeah.
Do you have any parting advice for aspiring writers or authors watching tonight?
You've got to read. You've really, really got to read, and that's probably where your best investment is, because you'll learn by osmosis. Other than that, I have a writing course on my website that you can go and purchase if you feel the need that you would like some help with your writing.
Wonderful. I'll make sure that I include a link to that in the comments and in the show notes. That would be awesome.
Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, thank you so much, Fleur, for joining us tonight. Thank you guys for watching at home. Next week, we're joined again by Kate Forsyth, who is coming back with her sister, Belinda Murrell, and they're talking about Searching for Charlotte, which is a memoir non-fiction book they've written about Australia's first children's author. So be sure to come back next week and check in and watch with that. Really appreciate your time tonight, Fleur. Can you let everybody know if they want to keep in touch and, and get to know you and follow your fiction even further, where the best place to find you would be?
Yeah, on Facebook under Fleur McDonald, and Twitter and Instagram under Fleur McDonald Author, and my website where I try and blog, which I'm not very good at. I keep forgetting, but it's fleurmcdonald.com.
Wonderful. Thanks, guys, and thank you so much, Fleur.
Thank you.
It's about time for that cuppa now, don't you think? Thank you so much for joining me tonight, guys. I hope you had as much nerdy fun as I did chatting to some of our absolute favourite best-selling authors. You will never believe the people I have lined up for us in the next couple of weeks. So to make sure that you don't miss out on any of the fun or really any of the giveaways, be sure that you've liked and subscribed to my YouTube channel, Annie Bucknell, or like me on Facebook, where we go live at 7:30 every Thursday night. You can also find me on Instagram at annie.bucknell, where I share more of my daily life and my daily battle trying to write a novel and file freelance feature articles with a toddler in tow. It's good fun. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.